partner of Index Ventures, Ben Holmes.
What a fantastic event. Thank you to the staff, and thank you for tolerating listening to me. The good news is I've been cut down to 14 minutes, so it should be nice and quick. So I'm going to talk a bit about the experiences I've had investing in games businesses over the last 15 years or so with Index. We'll come on to the relevance of this particular image, and I know I won't give up my day job and become a Photoshop expert very soon, but we'll talk about that soon. So a little bit about Index Ventures first. We're founded in the 90s. We've 60 people across 3 offices, Geneva, London, and San Francisco. We do early stage investing, seed stage, Series A, B, and we've also got a much bigger growth fund. So we can do much larger investments in businesses which are showing great traction. We invest in all sectors of tech, from networking, storage, software, infrastructure, online marketplaces, media, advertising, and games. The one that I'm most passionate about is definitely games, and that's why I'm here. So these are basically all of the games deals that we've done, and I've been involved in all of these, actually. There's actually a linkage between all of these. We would not have been able to invest in Supercell had we not invested in Playfish and Grey Area here in Finland. And Playfish also led us on to do an investment in Super Evil. So it's been an amazing journey and an absolute privilege to be close to some of these companies as they've created astonishing value and created astonishing content engagement and built enormous audiences. I tried to put all of the names on here. Obviously, not every single one has been fantastic. Some have been spectacular successes. Others have been wonderful experiences, but not spectacular successes. And the important thing for me is that we take as much learning from all of them as possible. About me. So I'm a partner based in London. I do online marketplaces and gaming, as we've discussed. I play all these games quite a lot, more than I possibly should. Particularly at the moment, Boom Beach and Vainglory. I recommend you check out those games. And if you do want to find me there, my in-game name is on the screen there. So my contention is that games is the best sector in the whole of tech, in all the things that we could invest in, whether it be driverless cars, advertising, storage, networking, software, all those things. Gaming is the most exciting sector and the best sector. And it's also probably the most misunderstood sector. So what makes gaming so special as a category? Enormous audience potential. There are no other areas of tech, possibly with the exception of social media, where you have billions of customers already prepped and ready to engage with your product. You can engage with them throughout the course of the day. You have that notification mechanic to bring investors, to bring gamers back to your products. You have inbuilt monetization. Effectively, everyone playing your game has a button to transfer money directly to you as a company. So it's an astonishingly frictionless way to build a business. The best-in-class games businesses have astonishing margins with small amounts of capital. Just the Series A or the seed round, they can often achieve wonderful things and get to millions of users and millions of revenue. And that's really where we as Index want to get involved at that seed and Series A stage. You don't need to localize a lot. You can translate, but it's not like Uber where you have to establish a presence in every single market you want to enter. So it really is, there are some astonishingly special characteristics that mean you can build astonishing businesses and products in the game space. There is competition for sure, but that's what makes it exciting. Given how good it is, why does it get such a bad rap? Why are there so many misconceptions about games? So the first misconception is people say, well, it's doing well today, but it'll probably be gone tomorrow. That people still say precisely that. And the reality is, if you look at it, you'll notice this from App Annie. Clash of Clans has established a 3-year franchise. Candy Crush has also been up there for 3 years. These lines are horizontal, and you'd have to be a complete lunatic to think that it's suddenly going to drop off a cliff. Yet the vocabulary around saying that these products are hits, which will be gone tomorrow, still persists. The second misconception is oh, this company's had one great game, but they won't produce another. That's also completely at odds with the data. King, Kabam, Supercell, and others have all managed to build astonishing series of franchises and all have multiple games in the top 20, 30 in the charts. And the last misconception is that investing in games is a gamble. Why would you want to do that? And it clearly isn't a complete gamble. And here's where I blow our own trumpet a bit. We've managed to make 3 or 4 fantastic investments out of 10 or 11 deals that we've been involved in. And there are a select few other firms like Initial and London Venture Partners who are also managing to show that it's not a complete 1 in a million gamble. There is a system and process and methodology you can develop to help at least give you a great chance of being successful in games. This slide looks an awful lot like an investment banker's slide, so I'll whiz through it. But essentially what it shows, the games companies are in yellow and the social media platform companies are in white. Just on the far right, you'll see Zynga is that's its valuation metrics back in 2011 when it's floated. It's not there now. But what you'll see is that when you compare the valuation of these companies to their daily active users, King and Supercell are getting really quite a discount. And also, when you compare the revenues to the valuation, they're getting an even bigger discount. And when you compare the profits to the valuation, they get an extraordinary discount. So this series of misconceptions, I believe, is leading to a real mispricing and an underappreciation of how integrated games and gaming and games are to the fabric of society. The mainstream media and the investment community too often wants to put games in a box and leave it there, when the reality is it's perforated and penetrated the whole of society, and the mainstream media sometimes doesn't really absorb that message and talk about it in that way. So I'll talk about a couple of companies, King and Supercell. Obviously, they've got enormous audiences. You probably know both of these companies are doing more than a couple of billion in revenue each year. King has slightly more users, but slightly lower monetization, and Supercell has slightly fewer users, but more monetization per user. But both extraordinarily large and successful and revenue and profit generative companies. I think what King showed is there's an enormous audience that wants to play games, and they were the first company that really was successful in bringing on board demographics that had never played games before. And I think what Supercell did fantastically was showed that audience, was receptive to a more sophisticated, engaging, challenging game mode. And they did a wonderful job of making it incredibly accessible. I think out there are companies that will be able to, in the next 5 years, do even better. And that's where this character comes in. I think in the next 5 years, we'll have a Godzilla game emerge. Something which has really the reach of King or something even bigger than that, really become so widely used and so widely played in society that mainstream media is unable at that stage just to put it in a box and think that's a weird games business. We're going to treat that differently. This kind of business will be valued like Twitter and like Tesla and like LinkedIn. This can be a $20, $30 billion valuation company with astonishing metrics. In order to do that, probably needs to be successful both in Asia and the West, and it probably, or definitely would need to bridge that core audience and the casual audience. I predict that will happen in the next 5 years. So how do I go about finding that Godzilla? So this is a very, very big stage and a very tiny font on this slide. So we try to evaluate games with a fairly structured methodology. And these questions on the right, I won't go through all of them now, but these questions on the right, they're the ones that we ask the games developers and the games designers when they're pitching us their games concepts. Just a couple of the interesting ones. What is your pitch to Apple or Google? It's extremely important that you get featuring from them and understanding what are their objectives to showcase about their platform. How does your product fit into their roadmap? Why will they feature you? What will your ads look like? What will consumers think when they see your ads? The App Store page. You actually get much more conversion data now about how many people have looked at the App Store page and decided to download or not. That only started to come out fairly recently. That's an incredibly important drop-off point. So what is it about the images and imagery you show in the App Store page and the description which makes people think, this is a game, at least I'm going to give a shot? Obviously, then you have a conversion and retention funnel. The most important phase that we look at is really what's the game there that's keeping that loyal base of users engaged post day 30. And really, you think of the flow. What's the flow that gets people there in the period before that? And then there's a whole swathe of different monetization mechanics. Boosters, pay up front, level unlocking. There's a whole plethora of these. The key thing is if you get the retention right, one of these monetization methods will definitely work for you. We've got a model. So where companies come to us and they've actually got some metrics already from a test market, we have this sort of rocket engine called Excel, which we put the stuff in, and we can look at the retention curves, the monetization level, the ratio of organic to paid, and we can fairly quickly work out whether something's got a shot at being able to pay back advertising expenditure. We would love to invest in games when we see games which fit these metrics. In practice, we usually have to make the bet much, much earlier. So what do we look for? We look for teams that are absolutely passionate. Critically, they're not tourists to the gaming space. They're not people who come from accounting firms and have said, well, there's a lot of money in games. I'm going to observe the best practice and try and replicate that. They're teams that have been in the gaming space for a long time. They've got a lot of scar tissue as a group, yet they've decided to stick together because they love games and want to keep producing games, whether it will be successful or not. And there's an almost telepathic bond between a small group of artists, developers, designers, analysts that produces the great games. We want people with the technical talent to do all the things that you need to build a great game. We need great engineers. We need people who understand all those principles that were espoused on the previous page about how games design, how they monetize, why people can be retained. They need to be able to build technology that can scale, and they need to be honest about how they use data and respond to data. So we would really love to back a team that is capable of building the next Clash of Clans, but instead they choose to do something a little bit different. So it's super important that we see people who, I think there's a phrase that one of the Swiss watchmakers use in their advertising saying, to first break the rules, you have to master them. So we want companies who understand the rules, they understand the best practice, but instead they choose to make a creative leap. And I think if you do that, you can produce an amazing business. Europe can win in this space. I predict that this Godzilla character is going to come from Europe, and he might even be in this room already. All the best game companies are already coming from Europe. I think there's an innate loyalty that's super critical for building amazing companies, which I don't see in Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, it's about jumping ship as soon as possible to the next fast-growing rocket ship. That's not an environment where you'll build amazing games companies. Europe, particularly the Nordics and Finland, is that environment, I believe. And the winning's not about raising as much money as quickly as you can. That's what Silicon Valley specializes in. Sparkle and stardust and fast capital raising. It works for them, but what's most important for Europe and why we can win here is it's about great teams building great products. So if you are working on that next Godzilla game, please, please, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you at whatever stage you are in the process. I'm often in Finland and the Nordics and London. Just reach out. I'd love to meet. Thank you very much. Goodbye.